Hey guys, so in 10.4 we're learning how to solve a quadratic equation by using the quadratic formula. Remember, the first thing that we need to remember is that this is the quadratic formula. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. This is the formula that we learned on Monday, and you guys will be using this constantly throughout this lesson. Now let's just review. Remember, to factor x squared minus 2x minus 24, we have to ask ourselves what multiplies to negative 24 and adds to negative 2. And that's going to be x minus 6 times x plus 4, which is equal to 0. So x is equal to 6 and x is equal to negative 4. So these are our two answers. Formula, it's another way for us to figure out what x is equal to, and it's especially helpful when the numbers are kind of hard. So in here we have our original equation is x squared minus 2x minus 24, and the first thing I would do is figure out what is a, b, and c. Okay, well, a is just whatever's in front of x squared, so it's 1. B is going to be negative 2. If it's a subtraction sign, it has to be negative 2. And C is negative 24. Remember, it goes ax squared plus bx plus c. So a is the number in front of x squared, b is the number in front of x, and c is the last number. Now the nice thing about the quadratic formula is we're going to be able to figure out x, and all we really have to do is plug in these numbers. So we're going to go ahead and make this equal to negative b is negative 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 2 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 24. This is all on the radical, divided by 2 times 1. Negative 2 is positive 2, plus or minus the square root of 4 minus 4 times negative 24 times 1 is negative 96, divided by 2, which then becomes 2 plus or minus the square root of 100 divided by 2. Remember, guys, that 4 minus negative 96 is the same thing as 4 plus 96, so we get 2 plus or minus the square root of 100. So we have 2 plus the square root of 100 is 10, so 2 plus 10 divided by 2, which is 12 divided by 2, so it's 6. And then we also have, sorry, we ran out of space here, 2 minus 10 divided by 2, 2 minus 10 is 8, 8 divided by 2 is 4. So the answers are 6 and 4, which is the exact same answers that we just got before. Now the quadratic formula is really nice to use, especially when we have some really kind of messy quadratic equations. So for instance, this one here, before we can use the quadratic formula, we have to make this equal to 0. So we're going to make it 24x squared minus 14x, and I'm going to subtract 6 to both sides, so we're going to have minus 6 is equal to 0. So that means our a is going to be 24, our b is negative 14, and our c is negative 6. So we have x is equal to negative b, which is 14, plus or minus the square root of negative 14 squared minus 4 times a, which is 24, times c, which is negative 6, divided by 2 times 24. If we do 14 squared, we should get 196. 4 times 24 times negative 6 is 576. And then 2 times 24 is 48. So we should have x is equal to 14 plus or minus the square root of 772 divided by 48. If we do that, 14 plus the square root of 772 divided by 48 is about 0.8 87, and our second answer is going to be 14 minus the square root of 772 divided by 48, which is about 0.3. Negative 0.29 or negative 0.3. So these are our two answers. Now you see, this is really nice because instead of trying to solve this rational expression by using our previously learned methods, we simply have to plug it into this equation and figure out what the answers of x will come out to be. Now this is the end of lesson 1. So this is 10.4 day 1. I'm going to continue on with 10.4 day 2. So if you would like to just follow along, just keep on following. Now this slide here is just for you guys. If you guys would like to try it out, go ahead and pause it, try this one, and then the answers are there for yourself. Same with this slide, 5y squared minus y minus 4. The answers for this one will be negative 4/5, and the second answer will be 1 if you guys want to try this one by yourself as well. The answer to this one is negative 0.4 and 3.9, so go ahead and try this one by yourself. And lastly, this one, the answer is going to be negative 3 and negative 1/2. So those are all just practice problems if you guys would like to practice. Now this is going to be the start of 10.4 day 2. 10.4 day 2. So in 10.4 day 2 or part 2, what we are learning is going to be this thing called discriminant. The discriminant is basically whatever is underneath the radical sign. So if we remember, this is our equation. So if this is our equation, this is called the discriminant. Okay, so b squared minus 4ac is called the discriminant. What this discriminant can be used for is it helps to determine the number of real roots for the quadratic equation. Basically, it tells us how many answers there are to our equation. So take a look at this graph. I know it's kind of confusing. There's a lot of different things. So let me just kind of give you guys a quick rundown, so follow along here. So if the discriminant is negative, meaning that the number inside of the radical sign is negative, so in this case, if we look at this equation here, we get negative 23. If the answer inside the discriminant is negative, it does not have any answers, no roots, because you cannot have a square root of a negative number. If the discriminant is 0, so in this case we have the square root of 0, then there's exactly one answer. It's the same answer. Okay, it's the exact same answer. So in this case, x will both be negative 3. So there's only one answer. And then lastly, if the discriminant is positive, so in this case it's root 17, underneath it is 17. If it's 17, then there's two answers. Okay, so if it's negative, there's no answers. If it's 0, it has one answer. If it's positive, it's two answers. So this is the main thing that we want to remember for day 2, 10.4. So we're simply going to figure out by using the discriminant how many values they are. Okay, so in order to do that, we're simply going to do b squared minus 4ac. So we're just going to do b squared minus 4ac. Just like before, we're going to write down what is a, what is b, and what is c. A in this case is 2, b is 10, c is 11. So we have 10 squared minus 4 times 2 times 11. So we have 100 minus 88, which is 12. Now remember what we have to think about. If the answer is positive, so the number inside the discriminant is positive, then that means this is going to have two answers. So that means if we were to factor out this, it would have two answers, or two real roots. That's what we'll call it. Two real roots. Okay? Just to refresh your memories, remember if it's negative, it has no real roots. If it's zero, if the discriminant is zero, then it's one real root. And if the discriminant is positive, then it has two real roots. Okay? Next one. So 4t squared minus 20t plus 25 is equal to 0. So in this case, we're going to make A 4, B is negative 20, and C is 25. So we have B squared minus 4AC. So negative 20 squared minus 4 times 4 times 25. So we have negative 20 squared is 400. And 4 times 4 times 25 is 400. So we have 400 minus 400, which is 0. If our discriminant is 0, that means that we have exactly one real root. So we have one real root. Here's our last example. For this one, we have to make sure, remember, we want it to be equal to 0. So we have 3m squared plus 4m plus 2 is equal to 0. So I added 2 to make it move to the other side. So A is 3, B is 4, and C is 2. So we have B squared, so 4 squared minus 4 times A times C. So we have 16 minus 4 times 3 is 12, 12 times 2 is 24. 16 minus 24 is going to be negative 8. Remember, if our discriminant is negative, it has no real roots. So there is no number, no x value for this number. So this is the end of 10.4. Please make sure you guys take good notes. The homework is on your guide sheet. So make sure you guys look at it and turn it in. It is on the worksheet. Alright, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bring any questions that you guys have.